So it's cold in the camper today. It's 9 degrees outside. And yesterday when I was getting ready to go boondock camping, I plugged the diesel heater in and was trying a little like room space heater that was running off my inverter. And I was pulling about 20 amps of current, which isn't too much and shouldn't be too much for this battery. And I was at full charge, and within about 10 minutes, it was still reading in the high 90s charge percentage, and it just shut off. So I've had a problem with this battery before. It shut off on me unexpectedly while I was still pushing in the 12 volt range of voltage. It shut off on me at 5 degrees one night and left me here with no heat. It's not supposed to shut off until -5, but for some reason it shut off at 5 degrees. And I'm wanting to find out whether or not there's something malfunctioning in this battery. When it shut off yesterday, it was still reading very high 90s in the percentile of charge. I took it out of the camper, took it in the house, let it warm up, because it can't charge in those colder temperatures, but it can still discharge. I let it warm all up and put it on the charger, and it took almost 6 hours for it to finally shut off. And this is the charger that came with it. It took 6 hours for it to shut off and say it was charged. I'm going to run this battery through its paces, and it's fully charged now. I'm going to put it in a camper. I'm going to get things going. I might even go camping overnight and risk being cold again. But I'm going to put some high current on this. The reason being for all this, then, if I need to know if this battery is still operating correctly, because at the end of the week I've got another one coming, and I'm wanting to pair them up, and then I can get the full advantage of using my 2,000 watt inverter in the camp. I don't know that I'd ever need that much power camping, but it's there if I need it. But I've got to be confident that this battery is actually working properly before I add something else to the system. So right now I'm going to go put this back in the camper and get this thing warming up so I get my fingers warmed up. And with the battery in, fully charged, my meter is saying 100%. I've got a little bit of current being taken off right now because I do have the inverter on, and I'm going to start plugging things in and trying to push this thing to its max. I've plugged that little heater in, which even by itself is pulling almost 30 amps off of the battery, and it's at this rate I've got about 3 hours till the battery's fully discharged according to the meter. So I had some really good results today with the battery. I put a heat gun on, pulling off of the inverter, so I was drawing some big amps. And that little space heater thing, just trying it, and I was pushing 100 amps at the end. Just had things loaded up and loading that inverter with everything I could put on it. So dropped the voltage quite a ways down, but with having the heater running, was able to keep that battery warm. And then throughout the day, then the sun charged me back up to 100%. Feeling pretty confident about it. And right now I just pulled in here. It was dark when I pulled in, but I found me a little spot to camp, and I want to try out this overnight and be watching these voltages, and hopefully everything goes well. The battery came early and I have it on the charger right now, bringing it up to charge. I have a lot to do if I'm gonna go camping tonight, so I gotta get going. And when you're making your cables, you want to make sure that you take off just enough insulation that you have copper exposed, enough that it goes all the way into your terminal end without too much of your wire being exposed when you're done. And there is a tool to do this, but it's quite expensive, so I just use a sharp knife, and it takes a minute, but you can do it with a sharp knife. And you should fit snugly and all the way into your terminal end. And then this is a compression type tool to fit and crimp your terminal onto the copper. Now I'm trying to make sure that the length of my new cables will be proper for the spacing that the batteries will be in once they're in the camper. And when that's all done, and I'm confident that they are the right length, I'll connect the two batteries together and leave them that way for about 12 to 24 hours to make sure they're both the same voltage then when they're in the camper and when everything gets installed. And because this is a positive side cable and I don't have red insulation on that side of that cable, I'm using just red electrical tape, and then just heat shrinking the ends with some heat shrink to minimize the amount of copper that is exposed when the cable's done. It's 7 degrees this morning. My batteries sat connected together all night last night and balanced out, so they're ready to be put in. But everything I'm doing today is going to require me taking my gloves off and get in there, so I'm probably going to make several trips in and out of the house, warm my fingers up. So off with the gloves. And now battery 1 is in its place on its lines where I marked it. And this strap, like this one here, it's screwed down to the wood on the bottom and then wrapped over the top. And so with a zip tie now, I'll bring those two together and they'll be holding the battery down, keeping it from wiggling around. And now I've got the second battery close to where it goes, but I'm not going to tie it down finally until I've made all the connections on the top, because that's that wire is very hard, and that spacing is going to be determined by the length of those cables I made. So I need to make sure everything is tightened down and that these batteries are sitting where they want to naturally sit before I tighten this down. So they're mostly hooked together. Originally, I had this cable running my ground, and it hooked up down here to the this shunt meter. But this is important when you're hooking up multiple batteries. Since I'm taking the positive off of this front one, because of internal resistance and other things involved in hooking batteries together, I need to get my negative off of the back battery. And so I have one more cable here that I have to bend and fit to replace, and this is going to be probably my hardest thing to do today. I've got to get this cable cut and fit so that it hits this terminal right here. And if you've ever worked with this heavy gauge 2-aught cable, it is hard to bend and get to do what you want it to do. So I'm going to take a little time to get that So if you do ever find yourself making a cable like this for this kind of setup, it may not seem all that important, but you want these fittings to be just right at the right angles. You don't want them like putting all kinds of pressure on the line and on that terminal, because it'll just be constantly pressing. You want this to go on and slide on and be perfect when it mounts on there, so that you're not always putting some leverage on that joint as it's going down the road, or even just sitting still. So one more little tweak here, and this cable will be ready to go on, and I'm just about done. So I got here just in time to get set up before dark. I have the diesel heater powering up right now. I'm going to go ahead and start my my dinner meal warming up, and then I'm gonna go for a short little walk in the woods. So I have a key for the gate to this place, but the lock was frozen solid. So I just parked down there at the end of the drive back, and it'll be fine for tonight. But I was intending to come all the way down this path and find a place to set up. I thought that'd be pretty neat, but I wasn't certain that anyone had been down here in a long time, so I wasn't sure. There's a lot of trees I can see back in the wooded part, a lot of trees down, and I didn't know if I could get back in this way, and then I didn't know if I'd be able to get turned around once I was back in here. So that's basically my main objective right now, is just to find out if I was to get way back in here at a nice secluded spot, even if I had to unhook the camper and get it off to the side, could I get the truck turned around? Because it's been a long time since I've been back here, so just checking things out before it gets dark. I think if I do come back here sometime, I'll try to get up that lane and drive down, and as long as the ground is frozen and the crops aren't out, and it's winter time, I can get down and get turned around by exiting out into a field and coming back in. But I wouldn't be able to do that during the summertime at all. But this is an easy place for me to get to, so it makes for a nice one, a night away. You do have to deal with the roar of the windmills. There's several of them in this area, but you're not going to see another person out here. It's a nice little place to hike around the woods and have an afternoon out in the woods. So right now I'm just waiting on my my dinner to warm up in my little oven here, and then I'll have supper. But until then, I'm gonna watch a little bit of video and just enjoy the Teardrop camper out in the cold. now it is definitely time for a movie and to lay down and get some rest. See you tomorrow. Okay, so most of the world is up and at it, but I slept in. It's time to get up and go do something, so I'm not quite figured out what my plans are for the day, but it's time for me to get packed up and out of here. So if you made it this far in the video, I thank you very much. I realize the camping and the scenery and stuff wasn't anything spectacular, but it was fun for me. And as far as the battery install, I don't know how instructive that will be for you as a viewer, but I am very satisfied with the results of putting that second battery in. On other trips previous to this one, I would be watching that voltage a lot and being considering how long I would leave on the lights and things like that. And on those nights, even running the diesel heater on a lower setting would, through the night, end up being, I don't know, high 50s, maybe 60% on the battery. And this time I didn't worry about anything. I cooked with that little lunchbox style oven. I left lights on. The heater I set for stay warm, and I was running it pretty high all night. I wasn't getting cold. And this morning when I woke up, I think there was 82% left on the system. So I still used all that current and all that wattage, but I still had plenty left over, and I could have stayed out multiple nights not worried about it. Now today, the sun was very bright. We're getting on to the evening now, and I'm fully recharged again. So it's going to take the same amount of daylight, of course, to replenish what I've taken off, but I've got a lot larger of a cushion now, that if it was overcast and it didn't charge up all the way, I could go way down. I can use a lot more. So yes, I am thrilled as can be with the results of having put that second battery in, and I think it's going to do me well in the future. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.